In this video, I want to talk about the human need for certainty. That we have two needs. We have a need for a baseline that is solid, and then we have a need to, against that baseline, interact, being able to depend on it as solid. And so we create certainties with which to dance and play. Now, if everything is uncertain, you don't know when you're going to step in a floor and it's going to dissolve, you don't know when you're going to put your hand out and it's suddenly going to get burned, you don't know when your clothes are going to be in the dryer after you put them in the dryer and when they're going to vanish, you don't know when you have money in the bank and nothing. What we do is we each, in our own way, catalog certain terrains in our existence and in ourselves that are certain. I trust that this will be here. And what this does is free up the mind to be creative in the unknown terrain, confident in its return to the certain terrain. In other words, when I trust my bank and I believe my money will be in the exact denomination I left it, and I can go off for a month to Thailand, I can play that much more knowing it will be there. And there's a balance point. It's kind of like the tree behind me is the certainty that gives me the courage to climb it, that it's not going to blow over. So as we go out on the edges of our reality, these certain areas become that much more important. And what I want to talk about is the way that certain kinds of certainty need to be introduced in love and in relationship to really dance and play with our partner. Now, there's many different views on the terrain, the pros and cons, the meanings of marriage. But one thing that marriage does, the commitment to life does, or the commitment for life does, is it introduces a level of intentional certainty that can unleash other areas of growing, healing, and changing at its best. Now, there's no exact recipe for this. There's no exact recipe for this blend and balance that we all create of chaos and uncertainty, normalcy and variety. But one of the things that is among the most vulnerable experiences we have as human beings is falling in love. Falling in love in such a full and complete sense that the music and the beauty of another begins to inform who we are. And there's a certain kind of falling in love in which one allows oneself to become different, to be born new because of the other person. And often this happens first in fantasy. We dream who we could be, what it would be like to be with them in love. We dream and we give birth to a new sense of self. And this is quite profound It can change our physiology, our preferences, our view on the world, our beliefs. It's one of the great honors of love, and it's the feminine aspect of love. It's the surrender of form in order to become, to please, to belong. To please, to belong. It's the surrender of form. It's a very vulnerable state. And this blossom, when there's this warmth of love, begins to open. When there is no certainty, when there's not enough contact with one's lover to know, does he or she reciprocate? Do they say yes? Is it the kind of yes that I can change myself fully to become? There's a fear of leaning in and becoming someone and no one is there to receive the gift. It's a profound fear. And so when we start to open without a clear container of relationship, we will often push back reflexively to see, am I safe? Is there something solid here? And when it is not there, when all that is there is pain and loneliness and emptiness because no one is there, or they resent the pressure, or they say, I didn't agree to this, there's a collapse of the safety to be born anew. It's a grieving process of dying to what could have been born. When what could have been born is beautiful, more beautiful than what is here today, because this is the gift. This permutation, this softening of boundaries, this evoking, this feminine surrender is incredibly vulnerable. And it can go one of two ways. It can lead to a recrystallization into a form that is even more beautiful. Or it can lead to a distortion, a bitterness, a betrayal, an ugliness. And we find ourselves having extended trust, vulnerability, and flexibility clipped, cut, judged, framed in an uglier light than we were before. It's the greatest tragedy and vulnerability of love and loving. So what I want to emphasize here is the need for intention, mutuality, and dialogue as we consciously enter this vulnerable terrain of reshaping our future and who we are to make room for one another. And I want to say that it's a blessing. At its best, it is a blessing. It's boring. It's boring, it's tired, it lacks growth. It lacks magic to simply say, here's how I am, take it or leave it, I'm not budging, you come or go as you want, here's how I am. And for the other person to basically say the same thing, and we overlap here 10, 20%, okay, fine, we'll do that as long as it works, and otherwise get out of here. This is, unfortunately, what is considered sophisticated or modern or independent, whatever it's called. It's an aspiration for many people to be more like that, to sidestep this sweet vulnerability that can be so magical when honored and so horrendous when broken, when betrayed. I'm here in Thailand, in a Thai temple, having allowed the Thais to, through my love for Thailand and the Thais, change me in so many beautiful ways. Among them, to pay more attention to my heart and less to my mind. There was a beautiful woman in the US, and I loved to cook for her. And feeling her love for me, and feeling the beauty of our love, I imagined, as I do so often, what would please her the most? What would create the most exquisite flavor? And I knew she loved Thai food. And I tasted a little bit, which I didn't like at all. But one evening I found myself cooking Thai for her. And the desire to bring her happiness was so strong that I had to imagine tastes and flavors through her eyes. It was the first night that I fell in love, slowly, but with Thai food, which is now one of my favorites. It's a way through loving, pleasing, and service that my own world has opened up. This kind of transformation, where we discover a new part of who we are, in service to and in love of another, is part of the feminine magic that both men and women can experience. It's beautiful, and it needs a certain sacred container, a mutuality, an agreement, a clarity. This is our boundary. This is us. And in that container, so much life, so much can change.